Hi guys, today we're at one of our distributors and they just got a shipment in that got beat up pretty bad. A couple of units got broken, and so I thought it'd be a good time to do a video on how to adjust the tops, the band, and the hinge so that we can make sure we get our grills in alignment and make sure they stay that way. And it could be just if you got one that was loose or needed adjusted, this is another way to do it as well. This is one of the ones that came in the shipment, and if you can see, it's got a little bit of an underbite on this side and a little bit of an overbite on this side. So what we're going to do is we're going to take off the back cover. We're going to take the tension off the springs. We're going to loosen the band, the top band first, and see if we can't shift it back in place, retighten it, and see if that centers it back up. A lot of time that's really all it is, just a matter of taking the pressure off of it, loosening the band, and then recentering the ceramics, the top and the bottom, to line them up. It's a little tougher because these are oval shaped, and sometimes the oval, it looks like it's straight, but not necessarily. And same thing with the hinge. It could be a little bit off center, and that throws the angle of the opening and closing off a little bit, where it just needs to move maybe just a small couple of millimeters, a quarter of an inch, and that way we're back centered, square, and everything's opening, closing, and we have a better alignment. You can see this one's got an overbite. Probably about a quarter of an inch or 3 or 4, 5, 6 millimeters. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take off the cover. So you can, if it doesn't have the cover on it, that's fine. If it does have the cover, let's just unscrew the 2 Phillips screws. And off comes the cover. That's going to expose the hinge and the springs. Okay, so to unload the springs, we're going to pull the springs out of the notch where they are, but you got to do it in the open position. So make sure we open the grill. So there's our spring, and I put this little tube over it. We're going to lift it up and out of place. Same thing here. We're going to slide this little tube up, get spring, pull it back and back down, and that way the spring pressure is off. Okay, you can see the springs are disengaged, and now what we're going to do, that means we have no spring pressure holding the top open, so it's going to be heavy. And shut the lid down, and that way there's no spring pressure on it, and that's when you want to make all your adjustments. Before you loosen any bolts, whether it's on the hinge or the bands, always make sure to take the spring pressure off of the springs on the 2 springs that we're showing here. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to loosen this top band, and that's going to be this hex bolt. I believe it's a number 5. So it's a number 5 hex, and I'm going to use the impact tool, or cordless here. Okay, and so I've got it plenty loose. You can see how much we've opened it up. Now that's going to allow me to maneuver the ceramic top. And because this one's pulled back here and sticking over here, you can see my fingers underneath, where I'm going to shift, turn it this way. So I'm going to move it to the right and try to line it up better that way and see if the alignment works. Okay, so we know I've got the band loose. I've got an overbite over here, sticking out over, and a little bit of underbite on this side. So I'm going to realign the top. You can see it's loose. So now I'm going to try to get the ceramic in line, the top aligned with the bottom. Okay, so now we're pretty close aligned when you're not looking at the band. The ceramics are aligned, so I'm going to tighten them back up and see where we are. Still got just a little bit of an overbite over on that side. So I'm going to loosen it back up. Try it again. Much better, much better. Now all I need to do is put the spring pressure back on and put the cover back on. Okay, I'm ready to engage the springs. And what I want to do is I want to slide this little tube right over the spring and pull it and put it right in place there. We'll do the same thing on this side. You can see there's a little grease on it, so it'll slide. And it just slides right into that little groove, and you're good to go. Now we got spring pressure. It's got to be done with the top open though. Don't forget, you got to open the top to do that. The alignment is much better now. So we're straight over on that side, pretty straight on this side. You can't totally go by the gasket because sometimes the gasket will be sticking out a little further. So you want to look at the bands and the ceramic and make sure they're lined up. Okay, we look really good on this one. We're good to go. Okay, guys, here's another Primo. This is a large. We were just playing with the extra large. And on closer inspection on this one, I can see that it's got a bit of an underbite. It looks like it's a little shifted. And then when I looked at the back and you look at the handle, it's hard to tell from here, but if you look at the handle, it doesn't look quite centered, right? It looks like it's a little bit too far this way. So we're going to see, I made some, put some marks on the back by the hinge because it didn't look like the hinge was centered. So I put 2 marks there. Hopefully you can see them. So we've got a little white mark on the middle of the hinge and a little white mark in the middle of the casting on the top. So that's where it looks like the center is on both of these. So it looks like the hinge needs to go over just a little bit. So we're going to loosen them up and scoot the hinge over. Okay, I loosened the bands. So we've got the bands loose now. I just used the tool to loosen them up. And we loosened up both the top and the bottom. And what I want to try to do is using a rubber mallet, just give it some tap. Okay, we've moved it over, and now it looks like it's a little bit more in line and square. Okay, so let's tighten it up and see what that does to our top and bottom. Okay, guys, I loosened the band, and we moved the hinge, centered it back up, tightened it up, and with still no spring pressure on it, and that's a key. There's no spring pressure, so this thing could fall, nothing to hold it up, and you can see the alignment is much better. So we're pretty even on both sides. The one thing I can tell you, when you do tighten up the bands, don't be afraid to tighten them up, because you're going to break the bolt before you break the ceramic. So don't be afraid to tighten them up. You want to make sure they're good and tight. The other thing is hold it up in place. Make sure it's up in the proper grooves, so that the bands top and bottom are in the correct place and they're seated all the way up against the edge. And that way, you know, they're seated. Now, we also have adjustments on the hinge itself, but you can play with that. You can see we've got slots where you can move and slide the top over if you needed to, and just do the top by itself, or if you needed to maneuver the whole thing and just do the bottom. But you've got more adjustments, again, right here on the hinge. But I didn't even get into the hinge on this one because it looked like it just needed centered and then slightly shifted over. So much better. I'm going to put the spring pressure back on and put the cover on, and we're done with this one. Okay, here we are again. This one is the large. I'm going to put the little tube over the spring, put it right up in the slot right there. You can see I just slid it over up in the slot. We're going to do the same thing over here, just over the edge of the spring, up, over, into the slot. It's that simple.